Hello, and welcome to History 315L, the United States since 1865. My name is H.W. Brands. I'll be teaching the course. I've been teaching this course, or one very much like it, for a substantial chunk of the period we're going to be discussing, from 1865 until the present. The course is going to focus on the development of three principal themes. The first is the interplay in American life between the institutions of capitalism and democracy. Capitalism is the way Americans have organized themselves economically. Democracy is the way Americans have conducted their political affairs. In 1865, when our story begins, the United States had established the principle of democracy, that ordinary people should exercise political power. It was relatively new in America at that time, having come in the last 30 years or so. But democracy would evolve over time. More people would exercise political power. So the principle had been established by 1865, but the practice, how would it play out? This is something that would evolve over the period from 1865 until the present. And I should say it's still evolving. That's democracy. Capitalism, how we organize our economic affairs. The United States was not really a capitalist economy in 1865. It was beginning to become one. But capitalism would really emerge, would flourish in the period from 1865 until the beginning of the 20th century. And capitalism, like democracy, has evolved ever since then. The two systems, the two institutions, and the values that go with them are connected, sort of. They have to do with promoting the opportunities for individuals. So individual rights in a democracy is very important. And a market system, as another name for a capitalist economy, is an opportunity for people to exercise their individuality, their opportunities in an economic realm. But there are some tensions. There have always been, and there still are tensions between capitalism and democracy. The fundamental principle of democracy is equality, the idea that everybody's equal before the law, everybody is equal at the ballot box. Equality is sort of the grounding principle of democracy. Capitalism gives no such regard to equality. In fact, capitalism celebrates inequality. People get paid different amounts of money for different jobs because they have unequal skills. And capitalism often works to increase inequality. So there's long been a tension in American life between capitalism, which tends to produce greater inequality, and democracy, which wants to restore equality. And in fact, if one of the things we're going to be looking at in the course of the course is the back and forth between these two systems and sets of values. So the theme one is the interaction between capitalism and economy, between capitalism and democracy in American life. The second theme, the second idea that we're going to develop is the emergence of the United States as a world power. The United States in 1865 was nobody's idea of a great power. The United States had everything it could do simply to hold itself together. That's what the Civil War was all about. And the United States was in no position to project power certainly beyond American shores. That would change over the course of the next century and a half. By the beginning of the 20th century, the United States was starting to project power abroad. In the whole of the 20th century, by the end of the 20th century, the United States would become the world's #1 superpower. In fact, from the 1940s until, well, arguably until the present, the United States is the most important, the most powerful country on earth. So we see a rise of American power, perhaps peaking in around the 1950s, and then comparatively declining since then. One of the things we're going to talk about is what is the trajectory of the United States in the past? What's the trajectory look like in the future? But in 1865, Americans did not think much about what was going on in the rest of the world. By 1945, Americans thought about what was going on in the rest of the world all the time. And Americans, pretty much until then, have continued to look at foreign affairs as a big part of American life. One of the ways you can measure it, just look at the articles on the front pages of newspapers. What gets covered in the nightly news, this sort of thing. In 1865, rarely did you hear about something that was going on beyond the United States. by the 1960s, you couldn't escape it. And this is still true even today. And we see maybe a little bit less now than was the case in, let's say, the beginning of the 21st century. But it's something we're going to be examining. So those are two themes. And the third theme is, what does it mean to be an American? The question of identity, and with identity, with rights. What are the rights of Americans? What does it mean to be an American? Who? Well, for example, in democracy, who gets to vote? Who gets to run for office? Who gets elected? These sort of things. And in the case of the economy, so who counts? Who gets the opportunity to participate in this market economy? And this question of identity, who's an American? I mean, well, sort of, they're all Americans, but are all Americans equal? And so this gets at this question of democracy and equality in democracy. So really, all Americans equal? If we go back before 1865, if you look at the 1770s, there was no pretense that all Americans were equal, despite, now this is important, Thomas Jefferson's assertion in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. That was an aspiration rather than a description of reality. And it also was confined to a particular political sphere. But in 1865, well, if we start at the beginning of 1865, slavery still existed legally under the Constitution in the United States. By the end of the year, it had been outlawed by the 13th Amendment. So slavery is off the table, but that certainly didn't mean that the former slaves were free. The former slaves were equal. And it was a real open question among a lot of people whether they ought to be equal. It wasn't the default setting of discussion, political discussion, or of American thought, or for that thought beyond the United States, that everybody was equal simply by virtue of being human. Women didn't get the vote. Women were not considered equal politically in the basic way of getting the vote until 1920. And and then how about immigrants? How about other people, of Native Americans? So this question of who are Americans and what does it mean to be an American? What rights does it convey upon people? This is something that Americans have been arguing about from 1865 until today. The various protests over Black Lives Matter and racial inequality and things related to that during 2020 and continuing until now. They demonstrate that these issues are still very much live issues. So those are the three themes we're going to develop during the courses: capitalism and democracy, the emergence of the United States as a world power, and the nature of an American identity. Who are Americans and what rights do they have? So those are three things that we're going to be looking at. They're going to evolve over time, and they're going to form some themes that run through the things that students are going to be doing in the course of this semester. So this is the course. We're going to begin in 1865. It says the title of the course is America Since 1865. That sort of implies we'll get to the present. Do we get to the present? Will we get to 2021? I don't know about that. It's a little bit hard. And in defense of historians, or at least teachers like me, who don't quite get to the present in courses that are implicitly such and such a time to the present, we don't really know the meaning, the historical importance of what's happened in recent times. So, what's the meaning of the Donald Trump presidency? Is it just a one-off thing? Is it going to become a model for future presidents? This is something we'll have to find out, and it's going to take a while to figure out. One of the things that historians fall back on is it's the too soon to tell argument. And Edward Gibbon, a British historian, an English historian, who wrote about the Roman Empire, was asked, his great work was The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And his story ended in about around 1500. And he was writing in the late 1700s, and he was asked, so what's the meaning of all this? And he said, too soon to tell. So I'm not going to go to that extreme, but you'll forgive me perhaps if I don't try to say too much about, so what's the meaning of the Affordable Care Act of 2010? Its future is still a little bit up in the air, so I can't tell you what it means. I have greater confidence if you ask me what's the meaning of the Medicare Act of 1965. That's got more of a track record. So anyway, we're going to deal with this. And what are the students going to do? What are you students going to be doing? You are going to be reading. You're going to be reading an online textbook. You are going to be reading another paperback book. You can get it on Kindle. You are going to be watching videos. You're going to be watching video lectures that I have recorded in conjunction with the online textbook. You're going to be watching videos that I've recorded as lectures for the course posted on YouTube. You're going to be taking quizzes in the online text. You're going to be writing essays, and you're going to be writing responses to the lectures. So the one thing I'm going to urge you to do is to pay close attention to the announcements, the Canvas announcements, because that's the place that I will be adding explanation to what's expected of you. Read the syllabus carefully, but the syllabus gives you the bare bones of what's it about. The announcements will tell you a lot more. And so with that, I welcome you to the course. I hope to have a good semester, and I hope you get as much out of it as I always feel that I get out of it every year.